I would love to get started right away then.
Okay. So I'm going to call the meeting to order. Welcome to the regular meeting of the Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Committee on Wednesday, October 6th, 2021. It's now 6 p.m. I'm going to ask the traffic engineer, Lauren Davini, to call the roll.
Member Allison,
Here.
Member Bergman, Member Haggerty,
Here.
Member Mooney,
Here.
Chair Powers,
Here.
Member Solomon, alternate member Coyne, you're on mute. You're here. Youth member Nielsen.
Here.
Here.
Can you hear me?
Yes, would love to see your video if you have it available.
I'm sick right now, so I look horrible.
Ooh.
Okay.
Sorry about that, Tyler.
Okay, no worries, Tyler.
Thanks.
All right, my little spiel. This meeting is being held virtually and viewers are welcome to provide public comment online or by telephone at 669-900-9128. And the meeting ID is 865-2507-8241# with password 071169. If you are watching the meeting and wish to provide public comment, please select the participants icon and select raise hand. If you are participating by telephone and wish to provide public comments, please press *9 when the chair opens the public comment period. When it is your time to speak, you will hear a notification that you have been unmuted. Press *6 to unmute yourself. You will have 2 minutes to speak. If you are submitting public comment to be read aloud in the record via the chat function, please write public comment in caps, introduce yourself, and write in your comment. There's a character limit, so please submit your comment in groups.
Okay. We're going to move to the number 2 approval of the meeting minutes, but I just wanted to make suggest one change to the agenda first. Is that okay, Lauren? Can I do that now? Okay, so between number 3 and number 4, between public comment and our first speaker, we're going to have reporting out by our ad hoc committee, our North-South Greenway ad hoc committee. So approval of the meeting minutes. Do any members have any questions or corrections for the meeting minutes? Okay, seeing none, we'll go to the public. This is an opportunity for the public to comment on the minutes. Lauren?
Before opening it to the public, Anne did point out that the date was wrong on the minute, so I'll be revising that to say the meeting in August.
Okay, August 4th. Yeah. Oh, thank you, Anne. Good editing. Okay. Any other changes or revisions? I mean, changes or corrections? Okay, so we will now open it to the attendees. Does anyone have any questions or comments on the minutes from the August 4th meeting?
Giving
Lori?
folks, there we go.
You just said something about chat and there is no chat that I see. That's all I wanted to comment on.
Okay.
I don't know how to fix that right now, so we'll just take comments. You'll have to speak your comments, which is the way that City Council has moved to, so we will probably eliminate the written comments anyway.
Okay. Okay, so we'll close public comment with that. And are there any objections to the minutes? Seeing none, we'll say they're approved. And we'll move on to item number 3 on the agenda, which are public comments for items not on the agenda. You'll have 2 minutes each. The time for public, this is the time for comment on topics that are not on the agenda. We value public attendance and participation at BPAC meetings, and we thank you for attending. In accordance with the Brown Act, BPAC will not be able to discuss items that are not on the agenda, but the fact that you commented will be noted in the meeting minutes, and the meeting recordings are posted to the website under the BPAC committee. So you can see the full recording of your comments on those recordings. In some cases, the Department of Public Works staff may reach out directly regarding specific concerns, and some topics that are brought up during public comment may become agenda items for future BPAC meetings. Your comments must be limited to 2 minutes. And do we have a volunteer timer? Thank you, Anne. Okay. Lori, are you raising your hand again, or is that from before? Okay. Lauren, do you want to repeat the instruction? Raise hand function. Okay. Please use the raise hand function if you'd like to comment. Okay, seeing none, we're going to move on to our next item, which is our ad hoc committee reports. Will just be one tonight, and that is the North-South Greenways ad hoc committee. Phil?
Sure, thank you. As a refresher, we made this North-South Greenway ad hoc committee to sort of follow all the projects along the North-South Greenway to help us be more informed for the projects that come up in San Rafael and our place in that. The committee is myself and Ann and Tyler are the committee, and we have help from a lot of people gathering this stuff, especially Warren, who's up on the screen here too. So there is a lot of good stuff to report. Because of that, I think I'll just start at the south. We'll start all the way at the Golden Gate Bridge, and I'll move north. And towards the end, we'll talk about a couple of things happening in San Rafael. So first off, the Golden Gate Bridge Transportation District did a virtual open house this afternoon at noon today for a bicycle safety study that they released a couple weeks ago. They didn't actually propose too many changes in the path itself, maybe some additional signage, and then they're very into bicycle speed limits. That process is going to keep going on for a couple of weeks and more public comments. And there's a virtual open house if you're interested in seeing that. Also exciting is our representative Jared Huffman included the Vista Point Trail Rehabilitation Project as his earmark in the federal transportation bill. So that is something worth keeping our eye on. Then this would really improve the experience of riding from Fort Baker down below the Golden Gate Bridge to the east or the pedestrian side of the Marin landing of the bridge. So we'll just be following that. Again, nothing for us to do. Sausalito has a couple of projects. They started recently a project to improve the ferry landing, which will include bike circulation. So where the ferry is now, there's large parking lots, and they're sort of reimagining that public space and what that could be. I think that is a year or multi-year process, and they're in the very beginning of that. But that is another thing we'll keep our eye on. Also in Sausalito, the Gate 6 intersection update was just finished after like years and years. So this is at the Sausalito end of the bridgeway from Mill Valley to Sausalito, sort of near the Mike's Bikes that is there along the path. And this is kind of a cool intersection for riders traveling towards San Francisco now. The intersection has a green diagonal path and bike arrows to clarify the path of travel from the end of that path to the southbound lane on the bridgeway. And video cameras detect the bikes, and there's also a push button for that. For northbound cyclists, there's a bike lane that goes right across Gate 6, and it's a pretty clear connection to the bike ramp. You know, it was noted that it doesn't really do anything for Marin City. So that's it is not very easy to ride from Marin City anywhere else. So it did not do anything to affect that. Moving further northwards towards Mill Valley, the Mill Valley Sausalito pathway is getting repaved in its most deteriorated section, which is like the southernmost section, which is great. They're going to do this work in October. They are going to close it completely for 2 days. The path will be completely closed. They have not said which days in October that is going to happen. That means there's only car access to get from Mill Valley to Sausalito. And yeah, so that's in October, and I think it was 3 weeks of construction, they said, for that. TAM just allocated some money to Mill Valley to improve the Lomita Drive pathway connection to the Horse Hill Path. This is not actually the north-south greenway. This is sort of tangential to the north-south greenway because we don't have the Alto Tunnel yet, but this is a way you get through to the Horse Hill Path. It goes by that. There's an elementary school over there. So that's good news. In Corte Madera, the Corte Madera Creek project is still going on, and it's a little behind schedule, but they're hoping to open that in the spring of 2022. Moving on to us here in San Rafael, we have a preferred alternative for the transit center, which is great, and we had talked about that in a previous meeting, and it was they chose the option that certainly I liked, and I think BPAC tended to like also. They do, relevant to the north-south greenway, they do have a couple of blocks there that are the proposed bikeway are also going to be a car drop-off and pickup area as you go towards the Lincoln Path there. The next thing, the San Rafael Connection, or Puerto Suelo Hill. I think we're stopping saying Puerto Suelo Hill. It's been fully rebranded to the San Rafael Connection. But that project is coming along. Patrick Seidler is going to present on that later today. Just as a reminder, we had 2 goals for that. One was safety with the intersection there on the north side of that. The other was to make it a pathway for all ages and abilities. Really, we were hoping to get a steady grade, a grade no greater than 5% if possible. Patrick, I think, will show the 3 different alternatives, and we'll be able to look at the one that seems to solve those 2 things we were looking for. Again, the McGinnis to Smith Ranch Road SMART segment is funded and awaiting permitting from the Civic Center to McGinnis Park, that area over there. We don't have any updates on the timeline of that, but that was great news. We announced that at the last meeting too. And then there's a segment of pathway in Novato behind Costco that's held up by a lawsuit, but maybe it's going to continue. And so the sort of to be determined of when that is actually going to happen. And that is all my updates. As you can see, that's a lot of good updates and good gap closures and things to keep our eye on. So,
Yeah, that's great. That's great. Thank you, Phil. I'm first going to ask, do any of the BPAC members have any questions or comments for Phil? Okay. Warren, did you have a comment on Phil's report?
Yeah, thanks, Phil. I just wanted to say we got Marin County Parks got in touch with us today about that pathway closure on the Mill Valley Sausalito pathway between Mike's Bikes and Almonte. And this is not their like set in stone date yet, but they're looking at the 18th and 19th as the closure date for the pathway. So don't
Okay.
write. We'll be putting out, MCBC will be putting out more info about that, but that's the days to avoid writing down there.
October 18th and 19th? Okay, great. Okay. Rifat, did you have a comment?
Yes, please, Madam Chair. For Phil, I just want to know a little bit more about the preferred alternative for the transit center and what does that mean, because the city is making official comments about the project after the city council on Monday night. And I'd like to get some clarity on that, please.
Sure. I don't know if I'm answering this personally or on behalf of the BPAC, but maybe personally on the north side of the preferred transit center. So the bikes are coming from south to north And there is a dedicated drop off and pickup area that you'll see on the north side, which is right in the area of the preferred bike route in our previous meetings. And when this came up, when we were discussing it, I think this was 2 meetings ago, we discussed this alternative, or maybe 3. A number of us had raised objections to the drop-off area, sort of the idea that doors are opening and closing right where we want the bikes to go through. You know, there is the other alternative. If you go all the way, there's a bike path like along Heatherton. There's a bit of a bike path north of 4th Street along Heatherton, and for a variety of reasons, we did not feel like it was very safe to ride that section. Is that what you're hoping for?
And I would like to get some clarity if it is a preference of the BPAC officially, or is that, I mean, I totally agree with your observations. I mean, nobody likes the Heatherton connection, and but I think anything relevant to the functionality of any of the alternatives, because this is an EIR, it's a draft EIR. This is our chance. You know, I mean, feel free to use the web to make your comments individually about certain things. It'll be addressed just as well as when the city, make the comment. So I think just voicing out your concerns here might not get to the draft EIR. That's, I just wanted to make that clear.
So Rafat, go ahead, Phil.
Yeah, are you recommending do you have some advice in terms of an action plan that we could take? Is this a thing that we should potentially write a letter about as a committee like we've done in the past?
I think individual comments will put the spotlight on the alternatives and the design, the specific design features of the alternatives. And it will be concreted in the record that there was an issue with that, and you can't just ignore it at any point. So I'm recommending that individuals make comments, look at the plans, and if anything does not sit well for bicycling, for bicyclists in general, I think you should comment on it. One of the things that I'll be making comments about the bicycle parking and the lack of the definitive number or operation of bicycle parking. Every transit center has to have a very strong bicycle parking component. Anyone who's riding an inexpensive bike is not just going to leave it unsecured or semi-secured with a lock on a track, so on a bike rack. So I think that the more we get feedback, or the Golden Gate district gets specific feedback about bicycling, the better. That's the point that I wanted to make.
Rafat, I just wanted to remind you, I don't know, the BPAC wrote a letter on April 13th addressed to the City Council on our priorities of safety and connectivity, which fall in line with our priorities in our bike ped master plan. And in that letter, we talk about a couple of things that might be worth the city's look at what we said in that. And if you'd like us to, we could also send that to the I think we could go ahead and send that to Golden Gate Transit as comment to them. I think they were copied on the letter, but I could check and make sure, see if they were or they were not.
It needs to be specific as comments on the draft EIR. I mean, if they received a correspondence, that does not make it an official record of the draft EIR.
Okay.
So it needs to be addressed to the EIR specifically.
Okay. DJ.
Hi, yeah, just a couple topics on that. So public comments to the EIR are accepted until October 12th for anybody that wants to submit them. The instructions for how you submit them are included in the notice of availability, which is the first part of the EIR. The city already has a drafted comment letter written on behalf of the city. It was attached to the city council packet from last night. So if you'd like to read the city's official comments that are going to be submitted to the draft EIR, those are open to the public, and you can get online and read them now. Just a couple comments on that.
That was part of the staff report attached to the agenda?
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah, so last night's action, I believe, was sort of the approval to submit that letter on behalf of the city to Golden Gate Transit as the city's public comment to the EIR.
thank you.
If I
Any
may, this memo is still in draft form and we have to finalize it in the next couple of days. Thanks, DJ, for mentioning the October 12th deadline. But I have it right in front of me right here. This is not shown. And I don't see any strong language about specific design of certain alternatives. It didn't go into that much detail, but I feel that the bicycle parking component has to be stated very clearly in order to make it to their radar screen.
Okay, great. Any other BPAC member comments or questions? Okay, I'm going to move to the public. Are there any? I see one. Lauren, do you want to?
Yeah, Jean Severinghouse.
Yes, hi, everybody. Awesome report on the North-South Greenway. Thank you so much to the BPAC and the subcommittee for doing that. I made comments individually several times, and I definitely did on the EIR about the need for schools to have a protected way to get from the south side of 4th Street when they come out of the new Tamalpais and go north onto Mission on West Tamalpais. And the problem, it's really problematic having a drop off of cars there on north of 4th Street on West Tamalpais. I don't think it's actually even necessary, and it'll do something even worse, which it will invite cars to turn off of Heatherton onto 4th Street. And 4th Street is the priority biking and walking street. So we're gonna have all these taxis and drop-offs unnecessarily turning onto 4th Street and then turning north on West Tamalpais. So that makes it worse for walking and biking. So it'd be great if the BPAC could really explicitly say that's not, the bikes need to be taken care of well in that area. Because we've been talking about this in Safe Routes to School a lot, and it just keeps coming up. We need a safe way for the school kids to get north and south and east and west right there, at 4th Street. So that's going to just make it worse. So I suggested that they take that not functional path on Heatherton north of 4th and carve out a drop-off pickup there on Heatherton for coming from the north. And if you're coming from the east or west, it's good to stay on between 2nd and 3rd. So carve out something not on the bike path between 2nd and 3rd, maybe on that sliver of land to the west of the train tracks. So it'd be great if the committee of the BPAC before October 12th could really say something very clearly, explicitly about that. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jean. Any other questions or comments from the public? Okay. Because that wasn't a particular agendized item, I think Rafat was taking notes. And I think individual BPAC members could also add that, pile onto that, add their comments as well. Okay, let's move on to the next agenda item, which is agenda item on number 4, which is the Vision Zero presentation. Leah, if you are right there. And Lauren, do you want to introduce Leah?
Yeah,
Okay.
thank you. So I'm just going to do a quick bio. Leah is the founder and director of the Vision Zero Network, bringing 2 decades of proven success championing movements to advance safe, healthy, and active transportation. She serves on the steering group of the National Road to Zero Coalition, as well as the advisory board of the Collaborative Sciences Center for Road Safety at the University of North Carolina. As a German Marshall Fund Fellow, Leah researched Vision Zero strategies in Sweden, Germany, and the Netherlands. Prior to that, Leah served as the executive director of the SF Bike Coalition, leading significant change on the streets and the policies of this leading Vision Zero city. She also served as a policymaker on the boards of directors of the Golden Gate Bridge and Highway and Transportation District and the SF Municipal Transportation Agency, as well as the National Alliance for Biking and Walking. And Leah is a resident of Sebastopol. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Lauren. Hi, everybody. It was so funny when somebody reads a really formal bio like that. I'm like, I like to walk. I like to bike. I take buses. Sometimes I drive, and those should all be safe, comfortable choices. And that's another way to say it. But hey, thank you so much. I really appreciate Kate and Lauren reached out to ask if I would join you guys. And I guess there is interest in knowing more about Vision Zero. So I'm excited to just do a little bit of overview. I was going to share a bit about kind of what we're seeing around the country, particularly in some communities that may be similar or might have some same issues as San Rafael or similar, and kind of let you know some of the kind of core principles of Vision Zero, but really want to leave most of the time to questions and discussions. So I'm a fast talker. I'll go really quickly through, share some slides and such just to give a little overview, but then I'd love to open it up to you all as BPAC members and those on the line, others. So if I can share my screen, is that okay? I'll just take things over here. Okay. Great. This looks like it's not full slide. So 1 second. Great. Does that look full slide to you guys now? Awesome. Great. So yeah, you probably know what Vision Zero is. It's definitely getting a lot of attention, but just for those that might be a little newer to the concept, the goal of Vision Zero is the goal of zero traffic deaths or severe injuries among all road users. And I really want to emphasize that. It's certainly getting a lot of attention, particularly among people walking, or deaths among pedestrians, because that number is so tragically increasing. They all are, unfortunately, but I just want to really emphasize Vision Zero is for all road users, people walking, biking, driving, taking transit, every single mode. And I put this in mainly just, it's funny, I forgot about the bio part, but to let you guys know I'm local. Again, I kind of cut my chops on this stuff, working with the San Francisco Bicycle Coalition. This is a picture of me in my old neighborhood in the Mission with my bike I still have. And let me just pause to say, I'm really, truly grateful for you all taking your time. I know this is volunteer, obviously for most, taking the time you are to work on safety and bicycle and pedestrian access in San Rafael. It's an awesome community. I like visiting there, and I know how important your work is. I've worked with a lot of different BPACs over my time, so thank you for the work you're doing. I'm just going to show you a little bit of what got me into this work. Obviously, I'll be honest, I kind of fell into bike advocacy. It's not something one studies, right? And Warren, you probably know that as well. It's something you kind of fall into. But what really got me, frankly, riled and as committed and passionate as I am, and really what motivated me to start this new work in Vision Zero, which I'll focus on today, is this terrible number. And as you can see, names listed on these posters. And for those that might not be able to see this, in 2020, an estimated 42,060 people were killed in preventable traffic crashes in the United States. And I really want to emphasize the preventable. That's really what Vision Zero is about recognizing these are not inevitable things, they are preventable. And it was shocking to me to learn this only in the past few years, that traffic deaths are the leading cause of deaths of youth in this country. This is actually internationally the same, but I was shocked that something that is killing more kids in this country does not get more attention. But that's changing. So I start with the shock and awe. These probably aren't brand new numbers to you, but I want to pivot now to, okay, what can we do about it, right? Let's not stay in that dark place. Where can we go with this? And a lot of communities are going places with this, and that's what we want to talk about is Vision Zero. So quickly showing a map. There's a few more that we haven't added, but there's about 45 communities across the country that have committed to Vision Zero. So this is a situation where, it's not just one person, it's an official commitment where their mayor, city council, police chief, transportation director, officially set the goal of 0 traffic deaths or severe injuries among all road users by a certain time. I don't want to pretend like they're all doing an amazing job, but they're all starting. They're along the spectrum here. But today I'm going to focus a little bit on kind of what does that commitment mean? And then what are we seeing in some communities? But I want to point out more in California than anywhere, which I'm very, very proud of us. That image looks a little funny, sorry, but you've probably been hearing this, maybe hearing this theme a little bit. A really simple way to put this is, we're not just aiming for 0 traffic deaths. We're really trying to change the culture around safe mobility. And here's a really simple way to put it. These are not accidents. Those 42,060 traffic deaths. And by the way, 1.3 million severe injuries estimated in addition, but these are not accidents. They are crashes. They are incidents, right? They are collisions. But to assign that word accident, and I'm not trying to get into who's at fault individually, let's leave that aside. What I'm going to talk much more is about the systems that we have and the piece that I think you all think a lot about, right? How do our paths connect? How are speeds set? How are we designing our communities, right? What are the land use patterns? How are we incentivizing or disincentivizing transit, walking, biking? All of these things really add up to this really basic theme of these are not everything I just named, all those decisions we make, whether it's your city council, or maybe you all on the BPAC making recommendations, or a traffic engineer, or a policymaker, or a police officer, the policies and designs and plans and practices are not accidents. We make all sorts of choices in our community, and they add up to something. And I'm going to talk about kind of what we're seeing, what they add up to. So a little overview here. Again, I know I'm going really quickly, but thank you. I know Lauren also shared some materials beforehand, so I hope you can feel free to dig into those more. This is a really high level approach or summary of the main differences. I won't talk through them all, but a couple of the main differences between the traditional approach of traffic safety and Vision Zero. So top of the line is, traffic deaths are preventable. And it's not like we've been consciously walking around saying, oh, traffic deaths are inevitable. It's not that, but even that use of the word accident, right? It's as if that's the way we were all raised, I imagine, right? It's an accident. Well, no, actually, let's look into it more. Let's understand if the road had been designed differently, if that car had different safety technology on it, maybe the crash would have happened, but would it have been so severe? Would that person have died? There's a lot of pieces here that make these incidents, again, the deaths preventable. So it's really shifting the mindset. So when we say Vision Zero, the goal is obviously 0. It's not just language. The language is important, obviously, but we're really shifting how we're thinking. So the next tenet I'll highlight here is the traditional approach has tried to perfect human behavior. Again, that might not have been conscious, but we've got a lot of attention on educating and enforcement, and I'm going to talk about that. Really, what Vision Zero says is, look, people are fallible. People make mistakes. Let's do everything we can to educate them, right? Before a 16-year-old gets their driver's license, obviously, we need to educate them. A child learning to walk to school needs to learn the rules of the road, to cross the street, right? All these things, someone bicycling needs to learn the rules of the road. But in the end, people are fallible. They make mistakes. So we as system designers, and again, I'm back to the planners, the engineers, the policymakers, that's your city council members, your state legislators, everybody. We need to actually accept that people make mistakes and integrate sometimes human failing in the system. So I'll talk about that. So I'm going to jump ahead because I think these other ones are actually one more, that individual responsibility and systems approach, kind of similar to that last one. We've put a lot of focus on individuals doing the right thing. Again, trying to perfect their human behavior. Again, even if we didn't consciously say that, right? Oh, wow, this terrible incident happened. What did that person do wrong? Well, let's look at the systems underneath it also, because we do have control over that. So kind of reinforcing these ideas. And what you'll see here is similar. This is a great approach I've learned very recently. It's a public health approach. And I want to emphasize a lot of what I'm emphasizing here is trying to take more of a public health approach towards mobility. And why is that important? Partly because it is a health issue, right? If we're losing 42,000 people a year, it's the leading cause of death of children. And we also know the dangers and perceived dangers on our streets are keeping people from walking. They're keeping people from biking. So that's also a health issue, right? In terms of activity. So how do we take more of a public health issue to this or approach to this issue? And this design or this approach, I guess it's called a spectrum of prevention. This is from the Prevention Institute. They're based in Oakland and they're a health institute. So I want to emphasize this because I think this is something that you guys probably think a lot about. And this, I think, lays it out really well. At the top end, you see, or the high end, you see things like policy, legislation, organizational practices. Well, how does that relate to transportation? Policies and legislation, that's things like, okay, how do we set speeds? Can we use automated speed enforcement cameras? Is jaywalking a crime or not? These are state level and other level policies and legislation, right? Organizational practices would be, how are we designing that road? Is there a sidewalk here? How long does this crosswalk, how long does the pedestrian have to cross on the crosswalk? These are all things that, these are not individual decisions. All those examples, they're not something I decide when I go out and walk or bike or drive, right? They're organizational and policy things. And then down at the bottom of the spectrum, you'll see community education, skills and knowledge individually. Those are still really important. I'm not trying to disregard them, but we've spent a lot of time societally down on those lower levels, again, trying to tell people, do the right thing, wear bright clothes. When in fact, what we need to do is invest more at the top level. So what does that look like? And let me be more specific, because I know I'm talking kind of broadly here right now. I'm going to name just a couple examples. We don't have time to get into all of them, but examples of this, what I call upstream approach. So looking at policies, organizational practices, design. Number one, I'm going to name two. Number one, managing speed for safety. Because if we pause and say, okay, let's try and teach everybody to be really good, but sometimes they're going to make mistakes. So crashes are going to happen, right? Even I'm not that optimistic. I'm pretty optimistic, but kind of a Pollyanna. But even I know crashes are still going to happen, even with the promise of AVs one day, right? Autonomous vehicles one day. Machines make mistakes. We will still have crashes. The biggest factor in the severity of a crash, well, the biggest factor of whether a crash happens at all, and then the biggest factor in the severity of a crash and the severity of potential injuries is speed. Speed, right? So if there was one image I could show, if you guys said, hey, you have 1 minute, it would be this graphic at the bottom to show you that someone walking, an average person, so I'm a pretty average build and health and blah, blah, blah. If I were walking and I'm hit by a vehicle, a car moving at 40 miles per hour, I've got a 10% chance of survival. If I'm hit by a car moving at 20 miles per hour, I've got a 90% chance of survival. These numbers are even more extreme for a child, for a frail senior, for certain people with disabilities, et cetera. So I just want to pause there and say, in downtown San Rafael or in areas, anywhere near busy transit or schools or places we know people are walking, do we want to have speed limits that are 40 miles per hour or even 35 miles per hour? I would question it, right? So speed matters. Again, I'm moving really quickly here. And then secondly, the big one, when again, thinking upstream, what are the design ideas? What are the organizational approaches? It's about the design of the streets. And you guys have already been talking about that, obviously, with things like the pathways, designing complete streets, which are slower streets, let's be honest. We kind of want to take the stigma away from slow, right? Everybody is like, oh, hurry up. Well, no, actually, if we want people to be safe, we're going to have to move a little slower, especially those in the big vehicles. So I'll just pick a little bit. Both these pictures are actually from my hometown of Jacksonville, Florida. It's a very, very sprawling, very suburban, very car-centered place. And you see these kids walking, and you guys were talking about safe routes to school earlier. These kids are walking to school. Hooray, right? Isn't it great that some kids still walk to school? School's about 3 blocks from here. These are kind of like upper elementary school, probably, if I had to guess, 5th or 6th grade. There's no sidewalk. And I know it looks like a calm street. This is actually right where my parents live, but it's not. People drive really fast here. So it's like, okay, what educating these kids doesn't do a lot of good here, right? These kids don't have a sidewalk. Whose responsibility is that? Again, it's a systems issue. The guy biking on the bottom doesn't have a dedicated or anywhere good to ride. So really thinking about how are we looking at the systems we've designed. So kind of zooming back out, then I'm going to share some quick examples of others of cities. Part of what this is, and anyone who's an engineer and planner will know these things, but I'll emphasize, part of what we're pushing is evolving past our traditional approach, where we have these very, in my opinion, siloed, important, but siloed approaches. We have engineers, we have educators, we have enforcers, right? We have the police, we have the ambulances, the emergency services. More recently, and I'm glad people are adding in more equity and engagement and evaluation. These are important too. So they've been called the E's. And I think there's a place for all these E's, but they're not all equal. And they're not, and they've been far too siloed. Like, oh, it's a police issue. Oh, it's an engineer issue. The truth is it's usually much more nuanced or melded than that. So really what we're aiming for is this image on the bottom. Hey, if our goal is safe travel for all, we need safe streets. That's the design. We need safe speeds. Lots of ways to do that. We need safe vehicles. It's not as much in our control, I'll be honest, but how do we have, regulators that are actually helping vehicles be safe and not as dangerous as they are, and safe people. Of course, there's still a place for all of us to do the right thing. So it's kind of a different way to think of it and a way to move out of those silos. And I just want to quickly say, because this is an important issue in our country right now, that part of this is not over depending or overemphasizing the ease of enforcement and education, but particularly enforcement. And I say that because we know we have issues with police enforcement in terms of racial bias in traffic stops. The number one way that people in this country interact with police officers is traffic stops. And I won't go through the time, but I'm sure we're somewhat, people are familiar with the data coming out there. So part of our role too is to say, how do we help design more self-enforcing roads? Police have much better things to do than pull people over for things. So let's really focus on the self-enforcing roads. And to say, how do we do that? Gosh, it's a big city, and where do you start? Just want to share some examples. Every single city we're working with has numbers like these, and I'll just start with San Francisco because it's closer to you guys, or I'll stay about 70. It's actually gone up to 72%. 72% of the injury crashes, this should say, injury crashes happen on 12% of the streets in San Francisco. That's sad in a way, but it's also power, right? Information is power here. Do they need to go out and touch every single street in San Francisco? No, they need to focus on their high injury network. Denver needs to focus on the 50%. LA needs to focus on the 65%. So one really important thing here is how are we using data to focus on where the high injury network is, and then really bringing those strategies like speed management and redesigning there. Quickly, some examples. Let's start with Fremont, which is getting a lot of attention. Fremont is actually really across the nation getting a lot of attention. I think it's important. It's not your, giant city. It's not a super urban place, right? It's more, I'd say, mid-size, more suburban-y in a way, but they've really, really committed to Vision Zero. Here's some numbers. So they started their Vision Zero program in 2015 and really had good success. So you see here reduction in fatalities and injuries, severe injuries, fatalities and severe injuries overall. They did go back up in 2019, unfortunately, but not to the point that they were pre-Vision Zero. I'll just pause and say the other city I want to mention that's had tremendous success, but it's so different. I usually don't mention it, but I think it's important for y'all. New York City, which has been leading in Vision Zero, they started now 6 years ago. In the first 4 years of their program of Vision Zero, they reduced traffic deaths in New York City, huge place, obviously, reduced traffic deaths by 30%, 30. Sadly, that the numbers have gone up again in this last year, but not as high as their pre-Vision Zero numbers. So just want to share that. But back to Fremont, how have they done that? Here's some of the ways. I'm not going to give everything here, but you'll see I kind of cut and pasted some of their priorities, and you can read a lot more on their website. They actually have a really good Vision Zero plan, but they really focused on safe speeds. They're looking ahead here around some state pieces that we won't get into right now unless people want to talk about them. But if you look over at continuing their local actions, I think that's the place to really look. They were able to lower speeds in some places, even without state approval, but they basically went out and lowered some speed limits. They retimed lights. They redesigned streets to be slower, literally restriped. Or I think actually, let me go back. This is a picture here. Yeah. So this picture shows you can see it's one way and then a median and one way the other. This was a 2-lane street, 2 car lanes, and the parking was parallel. What they did here, some of the things they did, they added a lot here, but they made this a 1-lane travel for cars, added the buffered bike lane, just paint buffers, but paint buffered bike lane, and then angled the parking. They also added bulb outs. The bulb outs weren't there. So people walking have a shorter distance to cross because of the bulb out. And obviously people driving have a safer place to ride. It'd be better if it were physically separated, of course, but safer. And you've got fewer, one fewer lane, but also a narrower lane. The travel lane, car lane they left is narrower. And what they saw, and this is an area with a lot of seniors, specifically a lot of senior citizens were being hit. What they saw is this narrower lane slows the drivers down. So there's all sorts of tools. What Vision Zero is saying isn't like a new thing in terms of the toolbox, but it's really, I think, about the political will and focus to do the things. Couple more specifically, you probably know San Francisco and San Jose, along with LA, have been leading the way on trying to get automated speed cameras, safety cameras. That's not passed yet at the state level, but another example that really is part of their Vision Zero program and a big change. I'm going to name a couple others just because I do want to show it's not just your big cities, Charlotte, North Carolina, I mean, big, but, places in the South and all across the country are lowering speed limits or adding more stop signs or adding more speed humps. Again, these aren't brand new ideas. We all know, factually or scientifically, right, or physically, you can imagine lower speeds are not as dangerous as high speeds. So what's really changed? I mean, not enough, a lot more needs to change, let me be honest, but with Vision Zero, I think there is this greater focus on safety over speed. And there's honestly greater attention and maybe accountability to our elected leaders to make sure that they are prioritizing safety, right? Because there's a lot of priorities, right? Is it moving traffic fast? Is it stopping congestion? Is it having ample parking? Is it safety for all the road users? Those don't all go together, as we know, right? You can't have them all. And I don't want to say I'm not against driving at all. For those driving, we want to make sure they can get where they need to go, but it needs to be safe for everyone. So it's really about kind of rethinking the priorities. Another example, Portland, Oregon's really leading the way in lowering speed limits on the vast amount of streets that aren't state owned. By the way, there are some state owned, but for the vast amount of streets, they're lowering to 20 miles per hour. Now that's not enough. They still need to do road design and other things, but it really sends the message that, hey, 20 is plenty in this case. I mentioned another one, Macon, Georgia, just because it's a very small community, but it was one of the first communities doing Vision Zero. It's slow. It's they're not having miraculous change yet, but what they are seeing is that there's more political attention from their mayor and their city council to traffic safety. Before, it just felt like kind of one-offs, things were happening around the city. And now they're really able to frame it as more of a system issue. They don't have a good bike network. Well, let's build one. They need to connect sidewalks. Let's do that. Let's slow car traffic down, right? So they're really seeing it as more of a systems level problem and not an individual problem alone. I'm going to stop there because that was a lot of information and I probably went longer, but I'd love to open it up to discussions, debate, pushback, ideas, and I'll stop sharing my screen.
Thanks, Leah. I really appreciate your presentation. So what we're going to do, I'm going to just give the BPAC members first a chance to ask questions. Then we'll open it up for public comment, and then we'll come back and have an opportunity for each of the BPAC members to express their comments, just a brief discussion before we go on to our next agenda item. And we'll talk about next steps. Okay, so does anybody have any questions for Leah? Kevin.
Thank you, Leah. I appreciate your time and your presentation. If San Rafael were to adopt the Vision Zero program or concept, what exactly would be involved? What would it be more than just setting policies for improving traffic and for minimizing collisions and deaths? What kind of financial commitment would the city need to make?
Great question. Thank you. Yeah, it is certainly many things. I'll start by saying, we really pushed and encourage to say, hey, it's not just about, right, like you said, it's not just about the policy commitment. It's not just about the words or accepting, hey, this is our goal, right? We all have lots of goals. That I had a goal to go exercising today. I did not do it, right? And I mean, we all have goals. How do we actually turn them into action? So part of this is many pieces, but we say start with the data, do an analysis of your city. Where's your high injury network? And make that public. And maybe you guys already have. I'm actually not familiar if that's in your transportation plan. I know you guys have complete streets policies and ped and bike. And sometimes it helps even just to get it in one place, if it's a ped plan here, a bike plan here, kind of everything in a way as a driving plan. So how do we kind of put it together and say, okay, what's the high injury network for everyone, all road users? And then really focus to say, okay, we're going to lay this out. We're going to prioritize these. We're going to bump them up. And let me pause and say, I didn't talk a lot about equity in here, and I apologize. I should have. I know I talked about enforcement, but what we see over and over again, and sorry, Member Haggerty, this is going a little off cue of your question, but I'll come back, is certain communities are more impacted, disproportionately impacted, along with children, which I mentioned, and seniors, also people walking and biking, also communities of color and low-income communities. Over and over again, in every city we're seeing, when they do that analysis, there's a disproportionate traffic problem, safety problem in those communities. And that's not very surprising when you look at the road design, right? Those communities are often where there are high-speed arterials or freeway touchdowns or lack of sidewalks or lack of good bike connectivity. So it's back to the system that's there and the results. So what do you need to do? It really is about starting with the data, making the commitment, starting with the data, committing to say, okay, we're going to make these changes, knowing there's going to be public pushback, right? Knowing that some of this is going to be telling folks, hey, we're going to go slower, right? So over time, is it lowering speed limits in some areas? Is it major road designs, road diets that might take up parking, that might reduce travel lanes? I know you guys are familiar. You're doing this already in San Rafael and across the country we are, but really trying to emphasize these changes need to happen for safety, really leading with safety. And by setting a goal, and that's part of the importance here, I think, is it's not just, oh, we want safety one day. We're setting a goal. Is it 10 years for San Rafael? Is it 20 years? Is it 5 years? I don't know. That's something to look at, but to say our goal is 0 in X years, and we're going to really measure on this. And, the transportation department, the police department, and the health department, they're going to come forward and report quarterly to the city council. How are we doing? Here are the 10 things we said we would do. Are we doing them? And again, it's not just the actions like the road design itself, but different policies and funding. Let me come back to funding. How much time are we spending on safety related stuff versus congestion management, level of service, car throughput? That's really important to it's wonky, but it's important, right? So back to your question about money. Thank you for saying that, because it's super important. The early cities we worked with, New York City, San Francisco, DC, Seattle, actually not Fremont yet, San Jose. Those were some of the first cities we worked with about 6 years ago around Vision Zero. All of them made the commitment and developed and created a Vision Zero action plan without new funding. They did not have new staff. They did not have new funding.
Great.
I want to emphasize getting new funding is better. I'm not saying don't get new funding, right? New funding, thumbs up, but don't wait till you have new funding. What this is about is priorities, right? And we're all, let me just say, raise your hand, anyone who ever thinks your community is going to have more than enough or even enough money. This isn't a new problem. Communities don't have enough money. We just don't. We're never going to have enough money. So it's always about priorities. What are we doing with what we have? So really a piece is to say, okay, we have this transportation budget. How are we going to use it? And I just want to mention real quick, this is important for y'all to know, Caltrans, the State Department of Transportation, is shifting to this safe systems approach very officially. And if you're interested, I can share some info with you and pass it on, Kate or Lauren. Mm-hmm. But at the state level, actually at the national level too, but more quickly at the state level, there's this recognition that we need to start doing safe systems. So they're starting to do grants for safe systems planning and Vision Zero planning. There's actually money in the federal transportation bill languishing in Congress right now, but that federal transportation bill has funding for Vision Zero planning and implementation. This is a long way of saying, I encourage you to look for money and get money, but you don't need to wait for money to start reordering priorities and focusing on some things more than we used to. It does mean change, and that's where the hard part's going to come, because
So-
some people are going to say, oh, what about this? What about that? Go
Okay,
ahead.
I want to get to, I don't want to use up all the time on one question, so I'm going to move a little bit more quickly. Warren, did you have a question?
Yeah, was the BPAC all done? Sorry. I
Oh,
don't want to jump in line.
were there any other BPAC members that had any questions? You'll have time to comment at the end. Go ahead, Warren.
Sorry, I wasn't trying to do your job, Chair.
That's all right.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, Leah, I just want to thank you so much for your presentation. Just two things that jumped out. You're talking about the disparate impact. I pulled, sort of on our most vulnerable members of our community. I pulled these data for San Rafael out of curiosity, and people over 65 make up, I think it's 17% of San Rafael's population. And in the last 10 years, they have been 58% of the people killed, the bicyclists and pedestrians, actually they're all pedestrians, killed in traffic. And so, I think there are a lot of really good things you point out, this idea of like narrowing traffic lanes. This is something that kind of is a hot button issue. We can't narrow traffic lanes narrower than 12 feet or 11 feet, but actually if we narrow them down 10 feet, as Fremont has, we see less speeding, shorter crossing distances, and then actually less constraints when trying to put in bicycle and pedestrian infrastructure. So thanks so much.
DJ.
Hi, yeah. On the topic of high injury networks or high death networks, I mean, we already have that documented in San Rafael. It's shown on a map in our bike plan. I think we have the data that shows where those issues are in our town. I guess I'm just curious about what kind of resources are available to help cities get programs like this in place from your organization or others. I mean, if a city is interested, is there a policy manual or a guidance manual that helps cities evaluate, how to do this? I guess I'm just kind of curious what kind of resources help cities evaluate and make a decision about whether or not to go this way.
Yeah, I'm happy to say the cities that are doing it have been really generous. People want each other to succeed, right? It's been really nice to see, like, Portland tries something and then it works, they share it. If it doesn't work, they share it. It's really nice and that's part of what we're doing. So I should have introduced, by the way, Vision Zero Network, we're a nonprofit group. And what we're doing is basically serving as a network for cities working on Vision Zero. So we're not on the ground doing it, but we're literally, if you look at our website, we have a whole page of resources where you can see, this is also new. I don't want to pretend like it's a perfect manual. There's not a perfect recipe book or such, but we're learning from those doing it. And we're learning from other countries too. But you'll see, we have a how to create a strong Vision Zero action plan. So it's about a 10-page document with some high level stuff in it. Again, each city is going to be a little different, but how to engage the community, have a stakeholder group. Like, there's definitely some great, I don't know if I'd call them best practices yet, because it's only a couple years old. I would call them promising strategies that we're happy to share with you. Lots available for that. And then if anything, I do think the funding is going to be increasing from both the state and federal level, specifically for safe systems and Vision Zero. Our biggest challenge, I'll be honest, is how to help people really make that real. And not just, hey, here's the name, we're using the name, and not in I don't mean that in a negative way, but rather like, oh yeah, we're Vision Zero, check. The follow through and that the real paradigm shift, I would think, in the work needs to happen. That's the hard part. And that's honestly groups like yours and advocates need to stay on people about it.
Thank you. Do any other BPAC members have questions at this time, or can I? All right, I am going to move to the participants. Wendy Callan, I think, has her hand up.
Hi.
Hi.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Hey, Leah. First
Hi,
of all,
Wendy.
hi, Leah. How are you doing?
Great.
Good to see you still doing great work.
Yeah.
I want to share some information and then make a request, and then I do have a question. I want to make sure that everyone knows that the county did a Safe Street study, which is really a prelude to a Vision Zero. This was completed 2 years ago, and part of the recommendation was to initiate a Vision Zero, and then the pandemic hit. And so everything was put on hold, and plus the county lost a lot of staff people. But I think it's important to know that there's a report out there that really does detail where the hotspots are in every single city and has measured, you can get it on the county. And Lauren, do you have an access to that report?
Yeah, I was just trying to link it, but we don't even have a chat function. I can send it out at the end of the meeting.
Okay, great. So I think it's important for people to see that. The second thing is, for better or for worse, Safe Routes to School has been tasked with continuing the Street Smarts program, which is one of the siloed E programs. It's an education program, but and up to now it has been just, signs and banners. We are hoping to have a community outreach and an engagement piece to that process. And I am looking for somebody from San Rafael to participate in developing the messaging and the community outreach plan. And so I don't know if it'd be nice if somebody from this group, I'm doing some outreach to various different agencies, but I'm looking for one person from San Rafael who has some understanding of traffic messaging and community outreach. So.
Okay, that's 2 minutes. Does anybody on the beep, is anybody interested? I think Wendy, maybe what we could do is send an email out to the BPAC. If you want to put some particulars in an email and Lauren could forward it to all of us. That work? Okay. Any other, I don't see any other participants with raised hands. This is your opportunity to comment. Okay, I'm bringing it back to BPAC. So Kevin, we'll go around for comments.
I just have another question. So Leah, if let's say the city, let's say San Rafael, the city of San Rafael or any other city says, we're already doing a lot of what Vision Zero is doing. I mean, we're doing it, we're gathering statistics and improving roadways. What is the advantage to us to become part of the Zero Vision Network?
Yeah, let me say, not a huge, I mean, you're going to connect with more people, but that's definitely not a reason to do it. I mean, let me pause by saying we're not a membership group. Nobody's like kind of within us. We're a two-person staff person group. So it's not so much that. I would say it is, I think it's more about if people are wanting to shift the approach in a significant way, Vision Zero and Safe Systems is a way to do that. I would say most communities are doing many pieces of the work there, right? Like, okay, road diets, bike lanes, yes, check, check, check. I think the difference with the Vision Zero approach is it's frankly a more doing it right. Let me say, doing it right is a more holistic commitment to that. Now, what it kind of does, I know I'm kind of talking inside outside here, but kind of more of an inside game, is it gives your elected leaders, frankly, more wherewithal to make the hard choices for safety. I mean, what do I find most effective? Again, like I was saying, it's not some new toolbox like, oh, Vision Zero, great. Let me give you this toolbox that's going to go fix all the streets. Not at all. It's the same toolbox. What's different about it, if done well, it's not just, again, not just taking the words on, but what's different about it, and this takes all kinds. It's not just like the elected leaders and agency people. It needs to be community members and advocates too, and getting media on board eventually. It's really this mind shift to say, you know what, our goal, we're going to do all the stuff we do, literally with the goal of zero traffic deaths. So I'm going to make a decision differently when it comes down to redesigning this road. And let's be honest, if there's a big fight about, oh, we got to, taking parking out or removing a travel lane in order to improve safety, there's this, frankly, guiding or overarching commitment the city has made, saying we prioritize safety first. we all say that, let's be honest. Every plan ever made about traffic says we prioritize safety, but now if you then dig into it, and I've been part of them in the past too, but when you dig into it, the choices there aren't actually lining up with that. And that's kind of what we're doing here, is calling that. I'll be frank with you. Does it mean it always works and it's like overnight? Of course not. No, this really is culture change. And I just want to give it credit. Like, people like the US Secretary of Transportation, Pete Buttigieg, is out there saying publicly, traffic deaths are preventable. We should set the goal of 0, and we now need to like change what we're doing. Now, does that mean everything changes overnight? Of course not. But part of it is really getting in the mindset. And frankly, as the next generation of planners and engineers and electeds come up, we're doing things differently. I consider it, frankly, not unlike, over the last 30 plus years in terms of, environmental awareness, right? People would be like, oh, let's, save the polar bears 30 years ago, but nothing would change. One could say, it's definitely not done a great job, but now decisions are made in certain ways around sustainability, right? So how are we doing that in the world of traffic safety? That was probably your answer that you needed.
Phil, did you have a comment, Phil?
Yeah, my comment was just sort of a reminder to myself and others of how this all started. And thank you very much, Leah, for coming here. And that was 4 months ago. We were going over our tracking progress from our bike ped master plan. And the first thing we have listed in our first goal is safety. And our 22 tracking progress plan was to adopt a Vision Zero policy. And so that's how this came to be when we talked about it a couple months ago. And so I think it's a good reminder that, our goal for 2020 was to adopt this policy. And in 2022, our next one up is we are starting to make improvements from the baseline that we had in 2020.
Great. Barry. Oops. Oh,
there we go.
There we go.
Thanks for the presentation, Leah. As I just wanted to say, I think one of the things that's really valuable about taking on the Vision Zero as a label or a brand is that it does give that it's something that really does focus, I think, both the whole public and the elected officials. It's also something I think that really gives staff the opportunity to say, to kind of demonstrate what they've done, because there have been some really valuable projects that they've gotten grants for, that have been implemented on the 3rd Street corridor and the sidewalks along Francisco. And so I think as a way to send a message to the public, to the elected officials, and to allow people to take credit for what they've done. So I think it's really valuable. The other thing that occurs to me is that not that we would be headed in this direction, but ironically, the places where you might actually see zero are some of the most unsafe roads around, because people won't walk there. So I do feel like we need to kind of keep in mind the issue of exposure. It's like, if there's a lot of pedestrians, you're going to see some collisions. And so sometimes, and we do want to focus our resources there. We do want to prevent those injuries and those deaths. But just because the numbers go up, it could mean there's a lot more pedestrians on the street. It doesn't necessarily mean that something has changed for the worse.
Who's next? Anybody else want to? Anne, do you have anything? Did you want to say anything, or?
Thank you so much for your presentation. It's very impressive, and I definitely feel like it's something we should think about moving forward on our committee.
Great, thank you. Tyler, did you have anything you wanted to contribute or add? I know you're not feeling well.
I don't think so.
Okay. All right.
Could I add something? Oh, go ahead.
Sure. Okay. Well, I just wanted to thank Phil for reminding of why we're looking at this. And my perspective, having a policy reflects values, and then when you have, oops, I have terrible. Can you guys hear me? I have a little bit of internet disconnection, but anyway, when you have underlying values for a policy, then all of the planning and project design flows from those values that underlie the policy. And I think that's important. We have the goal, our prioritized goal in our master plan, bike and ped master plan, is safety. And so this all kind of flows from that. And I just wanted to say, Lee, I really appreciated your presentation also. And I really like the point of starting from data and reports and looking at areas that need improvement and prioritizing those. I do think that this is a really good time to be thinking about this with the relocation of the transit center. That area in downtown is the highest area of collisions, deaths, severe injuries. And so we really want safety, the values of people and safety for pedestrians and bicyclists and those that are getting to and from the the transit center to be prioritized. As this, not only the alternative is selected in terms of specific location, but also as the transit center itself is going through the design phase. So this is really important. And then I also like the idea of integrating design with enforcement, and then looking at sort of when you set targets of how we want to reduce our collisions, we want to then measure how our progress, and that's part of, something that we can report out on as a BPAC at the end of the year, and what our return on investment is, sort of, if we do have any kind of funding going to this. And then just a reminder to this group that we will eventually be updating our bicycle pedestrian master plan. And as this is one of our goals, we could possibly fold that, look at how we could fold that, this is a priority strategy, into the next update of the master plan. Kevin?
Okay, I'd like to suggest, we have an existing ad hoc committee on Vision Zero, and I'd like to suggest that committee go back, look at this matter in a little more detail, and maybe come back at our next meeting with some insights or possible recommendations that the BPAC could look at.
That sounds great. Anybody else? Leah, did you want to send us off with?
I want to say thank you all very much for those comments. Thanks for the good discussion. I want to come back. Member Berkman, you very correctly pointed out it's not all about the data. And I apologize because there's that focus of the data is really important, and data never tells a whole story, right? Numbers never tell the whole story, and the community input is so important, but especially when we're talking about safety around walking and biking, you're absolutely right that there are certain areas that are so daunting that no one's walking or biking there. So certainly no one's being hit, but it's still a problem because people want to be walking and biking there. So I just want to mention real quick, part of an example of what the Vision Zero approach would do that's different than the traditional approach is, and I really appreciate this, and I can share more information if you're interested. New York City and Seattle have both done great work with this. They analyze their data and they say, okay, not just where the things are happening, but what kinds of crashes. So for an example, a motor vehicle taking a left turn over a multi-lane, blah, blah, blah. It's a certain kind of design and hitting a lot of people walking. So instead of just going and saying, okay, there were, I don't know, 6 of these over the last 5 years, we're going to go fix these 6 locations. They said, well, we have 100 of this type of this location. Those, we haven't had crashes there yet, but it's very likely we will if this is such a problem. So now they're not done yet. I mean, in New York, the numbers are huge, right? But they're basically going across the board and saying, everywhere we have this type of movement, we're going to change it. And in some cases, it's just a matter of like retiming lights. In some cases, they're banning the left turn for cars. In some cases, it's just a matter of like brightening up the crosswalk and adding more crossing time. It depends. So I don't want to make it sound easy. There's work. But that's part of the systemic approach, right? It's not waiting for a crash to happen to go fix it. It's looking at the whole system and saying there's certain problematic things. We're going to get ahead of those and fix them before we ever have a death there. And I think that's very much can be the case in places that are, not showing up on your map for different reasons. So I just want to mention that. And thank you. I'm happy to your point of resources that somebody asked, I'm happy to, continue to share with you guys stuff that we have, what other cities are doing. By the way, Fremont is very excited about their program. And if you're not already, that, yeah, they're so willing to like team up and like help people out. And there's other cities that will just get on the phone with you and chat for a long time about what works and what doesn't. So happy to help with that.
Well, that sounds great. Rafat, did you have a last comment on this?
Yes, please.
Okay.
Chair Powers, I would like to, before we leave, let Leah go, I would like to kind of give a brief overview of what we're doing and maybe have a reaction from Leah. I really like your systematic approach. I've been very close to Seattle, New York, Fremont. Fremont director is a good friend of mine, and I knew of the efforts from day one. I don't want to brag, but I was teaching this in 1991. And a lot of the Fremont people are my students. So I love what you're doing, and what you're preaching is fantastic. Do you see my screen?
We can see, I can only see half.
Okay, I don't know why.
Oh, there we go.
You can see it now.
Okay. I want to remind the committee and have a reaction from Leah about the effort in the last couple of years in San Rafael. We have invested in a high crash injury location software. We updated ours, and now we have regular reports. And were able, because of the crash history, we were able to initiate projects like the San Rafael High School mid-block crossing. In terms of equity, we are embarking on a canal investment plan and transportation investment plan. It's a $100,000 effort that will update a plan and will highlight what people in needy areas what's necessary in needy areas. We've been doing signal timing for pedestrians. 4th Street cycle length went down 10 seconds. That compromised the speed on the street a little bit in a concentrated pedestrian area, reduced the delay for pedestrians. We started out, and that's all in the last couple of years, leading pedestrian intervals at about 20 to 30 intersections. We took out West Francisco, we took out a lane, and we put in a bicycle track, spending millions of dollars in that project. We have created about 2 or 3 funding channels in the operating budget to hit places like signal visibility heads, high accident locations, bicycle specific improvements. In 2019, we spent $700,000 refreshing all striping out of nowhere. We just said our striping is not good enough. Let's clean up the city. 3rd Street design has many, and I encourage you to take a look at that, Leah. State-of-the-art design for at-level intersections, much smaller footprint, much smaller pedestrian exposure area. So we have a bike system missing gaps. We're working with the Bicycle Advisory Committee, and you'll see that you'll see Patrick Seidler is a regular visitor of our department. So we're looking for what's missing in our bicycle system and working very aggressively, getting grant applications for all of the above. And we recently updated the traffic mitigation fees, and it's a subtle change, but pedestrian improvements made its way to eligible funding projects in that fund, and that's a substantial fund. So that makes the spending towards bicycle and pedestrian improvements. We have regular meeting with enforcement team. We have people in the police department who are intimately close to what's happening on our street, and we have regular meetings. Lauren is very, active with hearing them and making changes as we see fit. So I think it's I'm going to stop sharing my screen so I don't, take too much of your time. But I think we're very close to being a Vision Zero city. And, from staff perspective, we welcome that to be official. We will be happy to work with the BPAC to make those policies the cornerstones for the program for San Rafael. And the systematic approach is already activated, and I am looking forward for the data, because when I first came to San Rafael, our report card did not look good. So there's a lot of room for improvement. And I'm sure that even, with just the list of things that we're doing right now, I teach and I go around and talk to a lot of people and professionals across the state through Institute of Transportation Studies with Berkeley. And I asked the question, do you have a priority system for pedestrian investment? And I tell you, you showed the statistic, 1 out of 9, 1 out of 10. It's not even a quarter out of 10 have that. So I feel that we are in good shape, and we're ready to take on that Vision Zero approach and instill a lot of the things that we're already doing. So thank you, Chair Power, for that.
Sure. Leah, did you have any quick response? We're running into our next agenda, but
that's great to hear. I mean, so often, to have that obviously base layer, you guys are already doing so much of this, and to see the value in really, committing and know it can help step up. I think part of this is also helping, frankly, when new leadership comes in, how do you already have a base? How do you institutionalize the commitment to safety? That is, I think that's a goal too, right? To make sure that others are continuing what you're doing. So I'll stop there. Thanks.
Yeah.
Great. Thanks so much. Really, really appreciate you making your presentation and coming to our meeting.
You too. I can't wait to hear what's next. Please keep me in the loop. Take
Okay.
care. Thank you for your work.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks, Leah.
Okay.
So to be clear, our to-do items are the ad hoc committee on Vision Zero, which is Barry and whoever else. They're going to work along with the city on next steps and present our potential next steps of the next meeting. Is that correct?
Kevin, what I understand is that there is the ad hoc, which is Barry, Kevin, and myself. And what we will do is take the information that we gathered today from the discussion and from Leah's presentation, and then come back with some recommendations for next steps. And we'll report out in December, and we will, work with the city on what do you think about this? Is that okay?
Great. Yeah.
That
And
sound
is
good?
that like in the form of a potential letter for us to look at again for city council? Is that how this is presented?
I think we don't know what it looks like yet. And I think in order to really make a commitment, we have to have a broad base of support. So we're going to be building that and looking at what we need to do to support all aspects of this moving forward, whether it's gathering data, whether it's, public involvement, but I think in order to get public support for something like this, we want to have information first, and a really clear-eyed view of what we're asking the city to commit to. So,
thank you.
Okay, so I'm going to move us forward onto agenda item number 5, which is bicycle wayfinding. And Warren, are you ready to present?
Yeah, thanks, Kate. Let me do a little bio.
I'm sorry. Okay.
Warren Wells is the Policy and Planning Director for the Marin County Bike Coalition, an organization advocating for a Marin where people of all ages and abilities ride bikes everywhere and every day, and where bicycling is a normal part of life and the first choice for transportation. At MCBC, he is responsible for improving Marin's on-street bikeways and multi-use trails, such as the Smart Pathway and the Mill Valley Sausalito Pathway. Before coming to MCBC, he worked as a transportation planner in the Bay Area for several years. Originally from the East Coast, he has lived in California for 5 years, car-free the whole time. Thanks,
Wow.
Warren.
Thanks, Lauren. Appreciate the invitation, and thanks, Chair Powers. So I know we're a little behind, so I'll try to keep this a little on the shorter side. So I'm going to share my screen and just let me know if everyone can see that now. Good, great. Okay, so this presentation is just something that has come up for me just in my role at MCBC. You know, we hear a lot from people. People are always emailing me. That's a lot of my job is just responding to folks. And something that's come up a lot has been people having a hard time getting to and from the Richmond-San Rafael Bridge multi-use path, both in Marin, but also folks coming into Marin from the East Bay. So I took it upon myself to kind of put my planning hat back on and think about a little about how we can improve the wayfinding. Wayfinding is a term for, you know, kind of signs and guidance for people traveling between different parts of San Rafael and the Richmond-San Rafael Bridge. So that's the basic of this presentation. Okay, so high-level overview: the Richmond-San Rafael Bridge was the pathway that opened on the pathway opened on the bridge in November of 2019. It's open 24 hours. It's currently part of a 4-year pilot program to use that. It was the third lane of the westbound deck. So far, about 163,000 people have biked over it, and another maybe 25,000 people have walked over it. Incidentally, it's how I get to Marin, since I live in the East Bay. So there are some, you know, the connections to the bridge, the infrastructural connections. Some of them opened up pretty soon after the bridge path opened, and there's still more to come. We still have a ways to go, especially with the connections to the bridge on going to Larkspur, but really happy with some of the work that San Rafael has done on that. So, you know, we have some of this infrastructure, but you know, it's not always clear how to get where we're going. So the existing conditions, you know, there is some signage out there today, but it's not entirely intuitive. You know, so this sign, this is at the top of at the top of the hill with the 580 flyover and Sir Francis Drake looking ahead and Anderson to the right. You know, this tells us the street names, but not really the destination. So if you are trying to get to downtown or the ferry, you might not know where to be heading. You know, so there also is some signage from the county. The county has their official bike route network, but they're not always consistent, and in some cases kind of odd. Like this one tells me to go right toward the transit center, but then left to downtown, which, I mean, I think I'm not sure if that's the best guidance. So in addition to that, you know, there are some issues that I've discovered, maybe with Google Maps and where it's leading people. Like if you're just trying to route, so if you're routing from the landing of the Bay Bridge to the transit center, this is the route it tells you to take, which it actually didn't used to tell. I think I have this. Yeah, so it tells you to go up over, you know, over Anderson, on Anderson, but then doesn't tell you to get on as the traffic engineer Rafat mentioned, the really wonderful new path. So still some work to do on this. In particular, until recently, I actually had to fix this by going into Google Maps and telling them that there was an error. They weren't recognizing the flyover almost 2 years after its opening. That's working now, despite submitting a bunch of requests to Google to try to fix this. This is still broken. So we don't work for Google. We can't fix that. What can we do on our end to try to lead people the right way? And you can still see this is what it used to say before until a couple months ago when I fixed it. So it didn't know about the flyover here and was telling people to go all sorts of crazy ways to get to Larkspur. And this is the issue that I just pointed out, that the Google Maps still doesn't recognize the Anderson to second pathway. And also you can see in Strava, which again is not everybody, but you know, is representative of people who probably ought to know better. there's a lot of writing both here on the lower right on East San Francisco, which obviously the city isn't where we want people to be riding. There's a lot of truck traffic. The pavement's still pretty bad. They're on, can you remember the street between Anderson and the, I forgot the street between Anderson and the new pathway. So people are kind of missing the pathway. So this is also on Strava, showing the most popular route between the Richmond San Rafael Bridge and the transit center. This is for the last 2 years. So this is, if anybody rides bikes in San Rafael, this is not the way you'd want them to go. I see Phil smiling. This has you on Francisco Boulevard East the whole time, and then has you missing. It's showing that most people, the most popular route is people missing all the really great bike infrastructure that we've been building. So just trying to show that there's a need for this. So here's what I've recommended, and what I'm doing here in this presentation is just, I've kind of sketched up the basics of it. I'm just here asking for feedback. Everyone here who lives in San Rafael might have some ideas about this, and we can kind of take back and adjust. And Lauren has offered her intern to help me with a little bit of this work. So really appreciate that. So I looked at the wayfinding the design guidelines from the city of Oakland. They have a very well developed manual for building wayfinding, and I've spent a lot of time writing in Oakland. It's very good. And so kind of basically what I wanted to do was look at what what are the main destinations you might be biking around, biking between in San Rafael. And so, because you can't have everything, but you want to capture the important things. So kind of running right to left, we have the Richmond San Rafael Bridge Landing. We have Larkspur Ferry, which isn't in San Rafael, but is a destination for a lot of people traveling through San Rafael. Pickleweed Park, the San Rafael Transit Center, and then the community center just off of Anderson. So this is kind of actually, those are the things that I wanted to get feedback about. Am I getting everything we should be getting? Am I missing something? Should I be leaving any of these off? This is the kind of stuff that I'm interested in seeing. So this is what I then kind of built, what I think of as like the routes that you would want people to travel on to get to these places. So it's a little confusing. You can refer to it'll be in the packet, so you can look at this later. But the yellow routes here would be the places where people would say, okay, the Richmond San Rafael Bridge is this way. So if you were, at the intersection of, Anderson and Sir Francis Drake and the flyover, it would tell you to go left to get to the Richmond San Rafael Bridge. And then the green here is just also showing the Larkspur Ferry. I could have done these each in 5 different maps, but I just kind of overlaid them just for simplicity. So green is just telling people Larkspur Ferry this way. So obviously if you're west of Bellum, it's telling you to go through the Cal Park Hill Tunnel. And if you're coming up over the flyover, it's telling you to go down Sir Francis Drake. Again, this I don't need feedback on the exact parts about this. It's more the destinations, but just want to show you what I had in mind. So this is showing, kind of the ways leading people toward Pickleweed Park, along Bay Trail or along Bellum, and then up the pathway there. The San Rafael Transit Center kind of tells you how to get there all the way from the landing, the Richmond San Rafael Bridge landing, and the community center. It's taking you back on Woodland instead of along the smart path on Anderson and the smart path. So this is a suggestion I wanted to run by people, get feedback on. So love to hear what your thoughts are. Then we can refine the plan and then consider, if this is something that BPAC feels would be helpful and worth supporting to, in the future, maybe get a resolution on. And Lauren has been really helpful. She and I did a field work bike ride around town a couple weeks ago to talk this out, and she has said that this is something the city might be able to help with. So I'll conclude my presentation there and love to hear people's feedback on it.
I had one comment just on the points of destination. I might suggest instead of the B Street Community Center, you choose a location that's farther west, like maybe over in the vicinity of where the 2nd, 3rd Miracle Mile Y is located, just to help provide navigation through Bristol Park to points west, like towards San Anselmo.
Cool. Yeah, and that's good feedback, and that's something I had been, sorry, I don't have to respond to everything. That's something I've been thinking about. It's a little tricky. I don't want to wasn't thinking about building like an entire city wayfinding plan, because then of course you want to involve Terra Linda. And so, obviously kind of constraining the scope is important, but if that's something that might be a good thing to have in there, we can definitely think about that.
Or maybe just to comment about, or maybe just, I'm not sure if B Street is on the route for someone coming from San Anselmo to the Richmond San Rafael Bridge. I think to end up it'd be a couple blocks over maybe. So maybe just to find a point that's along the preferred route, from points west to Richmond San Rafael.
Cool.
Phil?
Hi, Warren, and thank you for that. As you know, I am very supportive of the idea of this bicycle wayfinding. Again, I just wanted to draw everyone's attention to our bicycle and pedestrian master plan. And in that, we do have a connectivity item of implementing and maintaining bicycle and pedestrian wayfinding. And so this is certainly in line with the priorities that we have laid out in the plan, which just gives us another reason to do it.
Thanks, Phil. If I'd done my presentation better, that would have been in there too.
You did great. That was awesome. I will say on, I can mention to DJ's comment on, a location further towards San Anselmo is, I think as I'm thinking about the signs and like what would actually go on the signs, it says pickleweed, it says larkspur, and, getting over towards the, Albert Park and the community center is sort of a location over there. And I can't really think of a better location that you would point people towards in terms of like something that you would write on the sign. Like you wouldn't say the Y, you don't want to be like directions to Pond Farm, or, it would be the community center, I think is more appropriate.
Thanks, Phil.
That was my comment.
Anne?
Yes, thank you so much for your presentation. I would like to see some wayfinding signs on the Lincoln path, for the Greenway when you're going up Lincoln on the freeway. I see people on their bikes all the time on Lincoln Avenue, and I don't think they even know there's a path there. And I know I brought up with Lauren a few times, I don't know where there should be signs there, but there's no wayfind to really connect the whole path from like the tunnel, and you come through the tunnel and then, you're going through Anderson and then you're trying to go up to Lincoln. There's no way anybody on Lincoln knows there's a path right next to them they should be riding that would be safer for them.
That's a good point. Any other BPAC member comments? Tyler?
I think, first of all, this is amazing. I think this has been a long time coming. But I think one of the things perhaps that could also be added to the signs is if people coming across the Richmond San Rafael Bridge, maybe adding on the signs what locations have restrooms and somewhere people can refill their waters, maybe even the fire department and police station. Just because a lot of people, it's a whole new city in theory for people traveling, and just maybe adding some stuff like that onto the signs.
I like that idea. I think that's the thing we do for driving all the time. If you get up the highway, you know which way the bathrooms are, where where a rest stop is. And as someone for my job, I have spent a lot of time biking around Marin. That would be a very helpful thing for me.
Thanks, Tyler. Barry?
I'm just sort of thinking one step ahead. When the cycle track comes in on 2nd Street, I think so getting people there or directing them towards San Anselmo via that route can be something to keep in mind.
That's a great point.
Right. Okay, don't see any other BPAC member comments. Jean, did you have a comment?
Yes, thank you. I just would really echo having a route going to San Anselmo and Fairfax, a sign down 1st Street and to the new 2nd Street facilities, because people don't know about it. And there's a lot of people that I talk to coming over the bridge, for example, and who want to go to San Anselmo and Fairfax, and they just kind of like go wherever. So I think, get to Albert Park on Anderson, and then you can have a sign to get to San Anselmo and Fairfax down 1st Street. That'd be great. Thanks.
Great.
Thanks, Jean. Great idea.
Okay. Well, thank you, Warren, for your presentation. Really appreciate it. Really appreciate your work on it. And I think we're going to move on to the next agenda item.
Thanks, everybody.
So our next agenda item is the San Rafael Connection. And Patrick Seidler is going to be our presenter, Lauren.
Yep, let me read his bio. We had to shrink it, but president of WTB TAM, and he's worked on sustainable mobility at WTB TAM for 29 years. Patrick, I'll let you take it away. You're on mute.
You're on mute, Patrick.
And then there's the mute part. Thank you very much, Lauren, for that introduction. And so do I share my screen now? Is that what I do, Lauren? All right. And how come my screen's, oh, here it is. Okay, great. All right. How come that's not? Here we go. All right, so I'm talking tonight on the San Rafael Connection, which most of you know is the connection from the top of Puerto Suelo Hill to North San Pedro Road. The city of San Rafael and the Sonoma Marin Area Rail Transit, SMART, are working together on a project feasibility study to see whether it's possible to build a pathway between the end of the Greenway at the top of Puerto Suelo Hill and North San Pedro Road. Interestingly, that segment, while in the original SMART documents and plans and engineering, has not been in the strategic plan since 2014. But the really good news is Mayor Kate did a tremendous job at the SMART Board of Directors meeting and got some funding together to put together the project feasibility study report. And I'm here tonight to give you an update as to what's going on out in the field. The thing I'd like to do is show you one of my favorite drawings. And so if you kind of see it there, what that is, it shows you that in 2003, this is the long-term right-of-way alignment for the pathway. And if you look at the picture on the bottom, you'll see that North San Pedro Road is right there. And sure enough, the pathway comes up over the top of Puerto Suelo Hill and then goes down into what I call the railroad ravine. And so starting then, I got to tell you, because I looked at it even more, I looked at the 1994 North-South Bikeway Report study, and which was adopted by the county. And that also has the pathway going down the railroad ravine. And in addition, the 2011 San Rafael Pedestrian Master Bike Plan also has the bike path, the Greenway segment going down the railroad right of way. And I believe the plan previous to that had it in it as well. And then this is the 2012 Smart Civic Center Station Area Plan, and it too has the connection for the Greenway going through the railroad ravine to connect the Greenway and have a complete Greenway experience. This is what's going on now out in the field. So this gives you an idea of, so you see the Greenway in the top, it's marked in green. That's there. And then at the beginning, we see the Civic Center Stationary Class 1 multi-use pathway. And then through the middle, we see the railroad right-of-way. On the right, in the blue, we see Los Ranchitos, which is steep. It has a 6 to 6.5% grade. And the Marydale Class 3 route is also very steep, particularly up at the top, and it has grades of 14 to 15%. So this is what the users are faced with when they're trying to get from one segment of the Greenway to the other. And we feel, WTB TAM, feels that if you look at the criteria set out in the SMART's 2014 strategic plan, that this project would rank as the highest project to build in Marin or Sonoma County. And so now what we're going to do is focus on there's three alternatives we're going to show you that are They're being developed, 2 or 3 primarily by SMART, and they're consulted to Zune. And WTB-TAM is focusing on the Western alternative. And I wanted to just let you know that Matthew Hartzell, who works with WTB-TAM, who's a planner, had something else come up this evening, so he couldn't join us. But we have an incredible engineering team. Don Herzog, who, is a dean of geotechnical engineers in the county, his son Craig, Paul Klassen, who worked as an engineer for the county and designed the Railroad Ravine Trail 4 times, 3 times for the county and 1 time for SMART, is also on our team. We have a PG&E consultant. I'll show you why in a minute. And we're onboarding an arborist. And we've been working closely with Warren and the MCBC for their excellent help. And as well as, Warren also went to the graduate school at UCLA and planning, and is quite a planner himself. And so we've divided the project up into 2 segments, detail 1, detail 2. The proposed pathway is 10 feet wide with 2-foot wide shoulders on either end. So it's 14 feet wide, which we consider to be almost minimum for a pathway. And then as more people start to use it, you need wider pathways. In our analysis, we're going to start with beginning on the left hand near North San Pedro Road. And so you can see the alignment of the pathway between Pilgrim Way, which is a private area, and between the railroad. You can see there's plenty of space. Pathway is actually very level. It goes on very level. And then it gets up and it climbs up the mountain here. And for those of us who've been out in the field and taking a look at this, I got to tell you that the engineers have really done their work. And wait till you see this and get out in the field again. Before I walked you guys all down the steep section of the pathway, but you can see that there's 5 switchbacks now. And some of these pictures will really show you the beauty of it. And I kind of like to call it like the Frank Lloyd Wright of pathways, because it follows the contours of the mountain. And I also want you guys to visualize the very top of that hill up there. There's a possibility that the city of San Rafael and we, the community, could have a park up there. There's some tree cover. There's a great place for people to get a rest after they've ridden up the hill, and some people to hang out for a little bit before they ride down. But a place where we could actually bring some more greenway into our community. This shows you the alignment is all in public property. The top of the hill is Caltrans. That SMART right-of-way is down below. It's extremely wide in this section. And so none of it goes on to private right-of-ways. And this one here shows some of the constraints of the project. And so we'll be learning a little bit more about this as we go on, but there is a PG&E gas line that runs through the area, and you can see where that is relative to the railroad right-of-way. The pathway crosses it in a couple of places, or at least where we think the pathway is. It also goes underneath a group of apartment buildings up there. You can see the railroad right-of-way, and then those other areas are landslide areas. And so those are things that the geotechnical engineers have found and have some solutions on how to deal with. So some real opportunities to identify those early in the process. Now, this is what I consider to be, like I said, like the Frank Lloyd Wright moment, but really the genius of this design, which I'm not going to take credit for whatsoever. But, Don Herzog, Craig Herzog, Matthew Hartzell, Paul Klassen have really done a wonderful job. And there's a couple times they got stumped. But if you look at that, the path elevations in green and the natural elevations in black, and take a look at that, they're almost the same in each area. 170, 170, 160, 150, 130, 120, 110, 100, 90. I mean, it's just, I got to tell you, it's just a really shrewd job of designing and using the lay of the land, so to speak. And this gives you an idea of the western alternative, what the grades would be. And take a look at this. This is really neat, is it's mostly flat in a lot of the areas. There's some 5% grades as you climb up the switchbacks. But in the switchback, in the climbing in the phase 2 section, all of the switchbacks are flat. There's some smaller slopes that are slightly less than 5% close to those. And there's places where you get cardio recovery as you're coming up the hill that you wouldn't get in a 5% grade all the way up, or certainly not a 6% or a 14% grade. And this one here is another neat one that Warren did. And you can see starting from the left, that's North San Pedro Road. And there's the pathway coming up the mountain. But take a look at the way it comes up the mountain. There's hardly any cuts or any fill as it follows the mountain up the side of the hill. So in the railroad ravine, which I've heard some engineers say would be too difficult to design a pathway, we have a pathway that's beautifully designed that really fits in with the terrain in the area. And so this gives you just an idea of kind of what it would look like, a couple shots, view of angles. So this cross section here is down near the bottom, near the Pilgrim Way area. And you can see that the smart tracks and the pathway are almost level with one another. And the pathway is right at grade where it exists today. Here's a triple switchback that happens once or twice, I think. But you know what's neat about this is, take a look at it. The tallest retaining wall is 8 feet high. And they have some suggestions on how they might actually reduce that. But that's the beauty of this project, is there's virtually no retaining walls in the entire project, which reduces costs of the project. So this is up near the first switchback there. This shows the pathway locations. The thing that looks like a nail on the side is actually a rail to keep the folks in bounds and this fall off. And so that's the western alternative. And then we met with the Sonoma Marin Trail or SMART, a couple of SMART representatives, and Bill Gamlin and Ernest Clock, who works for Zune. And they had 3 alternatives that they were looking at. One was a western alternative that we didn't get too much information from. One didn't quite understand exactly where they are. We've sent them all of our materials, so we're hoping that they're really excited as we are about having that pathway in that area on the western side. The other one they have there, which is in the blue line in the middle, and then Pilgrim Way, that's actually the alignment that's in the 2018 San Rafael Bicycle Pedestrian Master Plan. And I'd like to apologize to everybody here, is because I've watched this thing like a hawk for 29 years. And I don't know how this thing got in the 2018 Master Bicycle Plan, but it won't work, and I'll explain to you why shortly. Then on the left side, you'll see in green up above, there's an alternative that comes down Marydale, but to get to that area, you have to come down a pathway that has a 14 to 16% slope going down to it. And the eastern alternative is only 8 feet wide and has extensive retaining walls, which are expensive, and some safety issues, which I'm sure Leah and Rafat would be able to talk about. So the 3 names of the projects, we call them alternatives: the western alternative, the Pilgrim Way alternative, and the eastern alternative. And we all got out there on August the 12th, the group of people from SMART, from Zune, the city of San Rafael. Bill Guerin was there, and then the WTB-TM engineering team. And we were able to only tour the eastern and the Pilgrim Way alternative. Pilgrim Way does not work. This is actually, I got to tell you guys, if you don't know this area, this is a really an ornament in San Rafael. The Congregational Church has done a tremendous job, and they've built 60 affordable housing units, which are those red covered units in those buildings in there. And we went down and met with them. Matthew did. and just really tremendous group of people. And they love the pathway idea, and they absolutely don't want it on their property. And there's several reasons for that. You could see the pathway is really a driveway for 60 different units. So there's cars coming in and out of it, all day long. But you'll also notice in the bottom left picture, there's a gate there, and the gate shuts at night. And so this alternative is not even open during hours of usage. And so the folks in the Pilgrim Way, the property manager, really liked the Western alternative. Just thought it was great. Said the people in the area, the people that live there, Pilgrim Way, would really support it, and did not think that the Marydale alternative was very well a good idea whatsoever. So, and they live, so that was just their 2 cents. We asked Smart and Zune for their drawings on the Eastern alternatives. They said they would get back to us. We didn't hear from them. So we gave the benefit of the doubt, did the very best we could. And so what we did was we show you the only way that you can get down. If you look at the picture kind of toward the center there, it says route parallels Marydale Road, crosses 4 private driveways. And so that's something you really never want to have happen with the multi-use pathway, particularly a two-way multi-use pathway, because the drivers are always looking to their left, not their right. And these driveways in particular are a little bit dangerous because they're coming from altitude, coming down, backing down, coming forward down. So there's some real challenges with that, putting a multi-use path in front of driveways. And the pathway is only 8 feet wide and has retaining walls that are substantial and will be very expensive. And so you can see one of the 4 driveway crossings here down the bottom left. The other thing is that this route drops you down into a freeway interchange. And so you guys all know this area out here. It's, North San Pedro Road right there that's a freeway interchange. That's an on-ramp right there that goes on to 101 northbound. Then you have 101 southbound off-ramp that goes, you could go swing back around and go northbound. But that whole underpass and interchange, that's a freeway interchange. And that's not what the North-South Greenway is about. The North-South Greenway is not about putting people into a freeway interchange. The previous speaker, Leah Sham, who's a really inordinate person, just a good friend, and a very powerful message for you, a very super important movement. And I think Rafat really, showed San Rafael's chops, that they're paying very close attention to these types of issues. And so there's really no way in heck that San Rafael should have an alternative that goes down there. In fact, the day we went out for our field visit, the police were doing an investigation of a pedestrian hit and run accident exactly where the pathway was proposed to be built. And so again, unfortunately it's putting like an exclamation point, do not build this here. And so, and I think Leo and Rafat would agree with us there. You could see the interchange that you're being dumped out into, expecting to get over to the smart pathway up on North San Pedro Road. You wouldn't send your kids there. I wouldn't send adults there. It's just way too dangerous. It's just not a place for it. So anyway, not a good idea. And this picture is the same as the other one for the Western alternative, and it shows you the height differences with the area differences. And you see 130 to 110, you've got a 10-foot retaining wall. Then you've got 110 to 90, a 20-foot retaining wall, 80 to 80, 70 to 70. So it follows the pathway down there, but a lot of retaining walls for only an 8-foot path, and putting you down into past 4 driveways and a freeway interchange. So more expensive, more dangerous, and certainly not the North-South Greenway, and not something that San Rafael wants to hang its hat on and claim the North-South Greenway. This shows you the cuts and fills in that Eastern alternative. The cuts are massive, the fills are huge. And so it's not an inexpensive project. it doesn't fall in the same class as that Western alternative, which, like I say, the Frank Lloyd Wright of alternatives. So in the right-hand corner here, you can see in the 2018 San Rafael Pedestrian Bike Plan has the Pilgrim Way alternative as the alternative in the bike plan. So we're in a kind of a tough situation. And that is that San Rafael right now does not have an alternative plan for where the correct location of the railroad ravine pathway should be over in the railroad ravine. So starting in the 1994 north-south bikeway, the county plan, the two previous San Rafael plans, the Civic Center stationary plan, all the plans that I know that have been done have the railroad ravine alternative in it. And so, I think you have what's called an exigent situation, meaning that you need to act so that the SMART board, after they receive these materials and see that there's a project, a feasible project that can be built, and the feasible project's not only feasible, it's the least expensive project that can be built probably as we move forward and do more engineering. And what we want to do is catch this project up to all the other segments in Marin and Sonoma proper, have been given money for environmental clearances and to bring the projects to 30% engineering. And in order to get those asks in front of the board of directors of SMART, we need the San Rafael BPAC to amend the 2018 plan and to recommend that we use a Western alternative in the railroad to so that we could advance that at SMART and with the Transportation Authority of Marin and with the Metropolitan Transportation Commission, so that we can get this environmentally cleared, get it engineered, and find the money to get this thing built. So if there are any questions, I'm available for them. And have to just tell you guys, I'm so excited about this path, I can hardly sit still. So I'm hoping that you guys see the opportunity here. And I'm looking forward to any questions folks have.
Do any BPAC members have any questions? Barry?
Thanks, Patrick. A very interesting presentation, and I certainly like the Western route that you have talked about. One question I had, and I think I had asked you this in the field, I don't know if your team has had a chance to look at it, but I wonder what happens when the path gets down to San Pedro Road. Because like going over near that intersection is kind of an awkward transition to where the path picks up on the north side. And maybe that's just one step ahead of where you've gotten so far.
Well, I'll tell you what, it's something certainly that we've spent a lot of time thinking about. And, Deputy Director Rafat Rai, has talked about that intersection quite a bit and understands its difficulty. Bill Gamlin in the field that day spoke toward it. And I think there's recognition from all quarters that we need to have a much improved intersection to connect the Western alternative with the pathway going around the neighborhood there to the Civic Center stationary. Does that answer your question there?
Well, I was just wondering if there were any ideas that were being kicked around for exactly how to do that, because it looked pretty awkward just being down there. I didn't have a ready solution.
The rail guys had some suggestions about the gates dropping down, things like that. Engineers had suggestions about where to put the pathway relative to the railway. It's also an uncontrolled intersection site. I think it's a little bit above my pay grade to technically address it, but I think that with the smarts that the San Rafael DPW has, and that SMART has learned through time, with its intersections, it's very achievable to get a safe route through there. And I think that we should not only be expecting that, we should demand that it's safe for everybody of all ages to get through that interchange.
Any other questions?
Any other question?
Yeah. I don't see any. Are there any members?
Kate, you're really quiet.
Oh, sorry. Hold on. I have a little bit of a microphone in.
Are there any other BPAC members who would like to ask a question or comment? And if not, Phil, Phil.
Yeah, I'll just make a quick comment. Thank you very much, Patrick, for that presentation. That was great. Again, like I said in the North-South Greenway update, with this whole project, we had two main goals in mind. And this was in the letter that we sent to Mayor Kate. And one was safety, and one was a path for all ages and abilities. And certainly based on this presentation, it seems that only one of the three options will satisfy both of those goals. I'm sure we could have, it is getting late now, we could have BPAC discussion about that, but I think it's likely that everyone would agree that that Western alternative is the preferred option to get both of our goals. And frankly, the only one that gets both the safety and the all ages and abilities. In terms of passing on that information and the best way to do that, I don't exactly know, Patrick does here have this recommendation of a sort of like an action item for us. I don't know if that's the best thing, the only thing. And maybe someone from DPW, maybe like Lauren or Kate would know have a suggestion for us.
Lauren, is in terms of taking action, I don't think we noticed this as an action item, but I don't know what the procedure would be how this.
Yeah, my intent with in the agenda, it says that this would be an action item, and so
Okay. I didn't see that.
It was asking the members to approve the recommended alignment, that is the Western alternative.
Okay.
And it just, can I add on to that, Chair Powers, so, being, in the arena, so to speak, as maybe Teddy Roosevelt would say, being in the arena, we need the support of the BPAC, and we need to be in the plan, because right now there's not a plan that has this in there in San Rafael. So we'll be facing headwinds as we head into the SMART board to ask for funding. And so we need your support. We need this stuff in the San Rafael Pedestrian Master Plan, like it was in 2011, like it was before, like it was in the Smart Station Area Plan, like it was in the 1994 North-South Bikeway Plan. And so this is kind of how the game advances. You do a feasibility, or excuse me, you get it in the plan, then you do a feasibility study, and you need to have the fundamental building blocks. And maybe Rafat will be able to speak to that, or Lauren will be able to speak to that.
Why don't we let Tyler and DJ go, and then Rafat, maybe you could follow up with some comments. Tyler?
I guess, can we just make a motion to like approve this? Is that something?
I think somebody, if you want to make the motion.
Can I? All right. I make a motion to approve this amendment to the bicycle pedestrian master plan.
Okay. Is there a second?
Can I just make a comment?
Yeah, I was just going to have discussion after whether or not we have a second motion, but go ahead, DJ.
Well, my comment is about this from a procedural perspective. We're not an approval body. We don't approve changes. We didn't even approve this plan. The council approves the plan. I was trying to check right now. I believe the plan has leeway in it to allow Public Works to make updates to it at their discretion throughout the life of the plan. I don't think that this is a matter that needs the BPAC to approve. I think the BPAC can request or recommend to the DPW that they make the update. I think the DPW has the discretion to do it.
I'm fine with that.
Just from a matter of point, we're not an approval body. I think it's confusing to the public when we approve things. We don't actually approve anything. We can't reject or approve something. We can We can make
Make a recommendation. Okay, good point. Thank you. Rafat?
Uh, Good evening again, and on behalf of the city staff and the BPAC, and thank Patrick Seidler personally. I'm really appreciative of the amount of work that Patrick Seidler put his staff with the WTB and TAM to make, I mean, this is a challenging hill, and it's easy for someone who doesn't like this alternative to say it's just too steep and dismiss it. And I think Patrick Seidler, thank you for what you've done, you and Matthew and your staff. And I really like the approach. I like the alignment. However, there is a procedure. There is a concurrent study going on. There is a study with 3 alternatives, and I think that the BPAC should weigh in when the study is concluded. We don't want to, cut off an effort that we paid 50% of, I believe, the TAM study that's led by SMART. I think we should hear from SMART. I think we should ask all the questions for SMART if they come in and recommend a different alternative. And I agree with DJ that this is not an approving body. However, we can, you have the option to make a statement that, based on what we saw, we strongly support that this option be fully vetted before it's discounted by anybody. And that does the same thing that Patrick is after, basically. I think we are on the same page. I think everybody, transportation professional would favor that, because it has an opportunity to be a beautiful facility. I mean, we can make it the bicycle park. I mean, we can brand this. This is what makes the bike paths exciting. So I think there's a huge opportunity on that hill, and Patrick went all the way and got it down to a lot more than conceptual. I mean, very close to engineering drawings. So I don't think this alternative is going anywhere. And if you ask for my recommendation, Chair Powers, I mean, you can make any statement you want. Strongly support. We should advocate. We can do whatever it takes to. You can send a letter to the Zoom or the consultant who's doing the study, or you can send this, direct a correspondence to SMART project manager, because I see that the game is still on, and I don't see a conclusion. And if the conclusion comes trying to kneecap this preferred alternative, clearly superior alternative, at least we have the ammunition to say, what are you talking about? You had all of that in front of you. So I will stop here. Thank you for the opportunity.
Barry? Thank you, Rafat.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, like I said, I didn't realize that study was underway and it's actively looking at that. So I think, sure, it makes sense to wait until all of that comes out. Although, Patrick, from what you presented, yeah, just having that that segment without any crossings and with the less steep grades, I mean, it certainly looks like the way to go if that's at all possible. But sure, let's get all the information out on the table. I don't imagine that this would actually require a formal amendment. I mean, generally when I've seen plans, they're kind of a line on the page. A feasibility study will narrow that down and you can shift the alignment. So I don't think we need to go to that unless it's more of a strategic thing to illustrate support and the city's weight behind it. But that may be just more, why undertake the work if it's not really needed.
Kevin?
I also support Patrick's concept. And I was wondering about the timing of this. And I also agree with Rafat that if this study is going on, we should certainly not opine a recommendation. I think we can be an advocate. The other thing I wanted to mention is that I think we are an advisory committee to the city council, so it was really not appropriate for us to communicate or advocate a position directly to SMART or any other body. At least that's my understanding.
Thank you for both to you and DJ about reminding us what our role is. Lauren, do you have any input on moving forward, or, I mean, do we have until our next meeting to have a broader discussion on how to support if the committee supports?
We could certainly move this to our next meeting. I'm hearing general support of this alignment. I don't think you need to take an action if the group feels like this is out of bounds. I did ask around. I felt the same as Barry. I was like, well, there is a line in the master plan and maybe that line changes. But the input I was getting when I was putting this agenda together was, oh, you should ask for formal feedback. So I'm just not quite sure of the process, but I think you can just take no action as well. And but I've taken lots of notes that I'm hearing in general support of this Western alternative.
DJ, did you have a comment?
Yeah, I mean, I would like to ask about the timing on when the study that the city has contributed to is going to be completed. And I guess I'd like to, inquire about whether or not that can be an agendized item, for our next meeting, if that timing works out well. And, and also, I guess, more broadly, whether the time, we meet every 2 months, does the timing of our meeting line up well with the timing of that study in terms of like when it's going to be completed and when people are going to be evaluating next steps based on the findings?
I don't know the timing.
I could give you some input on that, being a participant in it, with Warren and with the city of San Rafael, is right now what you have on your hands is you have your alternative that somehow you have a line on a map that has been eliminated as an alternative because it goes through private property and has gates that close. So what the city has is that you just drew a blank card. And so as the project process goes forward, the more you can support what's the proper alternative, the better and easier it's going to be. So to suggest that you not do anything or you wait, I got to tell you guys, this isn't the time to do that. What this is an opportunity at hand to say, we think there should be a line in there, and you recommend it to the city council. And it's a great opportunity for the city council, for them to learn about it and to find out about it. It doesn't happen very often that we get one of these. We can thank Mayor Kate for giving us the opportunity. But whatever the process is, your plan is flexible to amend. And whatever the process is, it will give the advocates and San Rafael the better opportunity to achieve the result that it wants.
So, Rafat?
Hello again. I think that the BPAC can show the support, and obviously there's a thumbs up from every member that we like what we see. I mean, it seems like it is intuitive what we're doing here. We can acknowledge, you can even send a letter to WTB TAM and telling them we recognize the studies in undergoing and we saw your presentation. And we like what's in the presentation, and it should be presented to the BPAC again once the official study is concluded. so we can do a lot of things here, and they're all supportive of where we all are. You know, Chair Powers, you can direct staff to write that letter on behalf of BPAC, and we'll be happy to oblige.
Okay. It's been not super clear all the time how our advisory role to the city council is implemented, or, what that looks like. And we have written 2 letters to city council last spring about both this project and something that's escaping me, but I do want to follow whatever the city's expectations are of BPAC in terms of how we communicate. So if it's a letter of support to the city council and we copy others, I'm feeling like that would have a lot of comfort for me, comfort zone, because we've done that before and it's had some positive results when Mayor Kate, who's on the SMART board, took the bull by the horns. But I kind of feel similar to Kevin that our role is an advisory committee to the city council, and that we should originally direct our communication to city council, and that maybe copy or let the city council. I'm just not really sure. The other thing that I wanted to say is that the general plan was just approved, and I know this is another aspect of this project, and it's on public property. I can't remember what the hillside, who owns that. Did you say that was Caltrans, Patrick?
The top of the area was on Caltrans, and
Okay.
then it goes on to SMART.
I don't know that there's any jurisdiction then, but minimizing tree removal and protecting those beautiful trees that people would want to rest under to the extent possible with the alignment, I think is a priority that's been outlined in the adopted San Rafael general plan. So I don't know, on state property, whether that has any impact or not, but I just got out of a tree meeting before this one. I think it's important to protect not only trees that are older and well established, but also our native trees, especially during climate change. But as chair of BPAC, I can, we could take get a feel that everybody is in support of this and write a letter of support to the city council. And that's what I'm suggesting. And then I'm wondering if Lauren and Rafat, when we write the letter to the city, could you then use that letter in directing it towards the appropriate bodies to show BPAC's support for the project, for the Western alignment? And then you could, as the DPW department, change the alignment in the general plan. Does that sound appropriate?
Let me just state my concern again. We might be premature in our determination because we did not hear from the consultant who is undertaking this study. That's my only concern about coming out of the gate, swinging towards this. I know in my heart that this is the right solution, but I don't want to undermine an effort by, TAM, SMART, and the city of San Rafael met and decided to hire Zoom, and we have not seen their report yet.
Okay. So Patrick, what is the time constraint or the time, the pressure on time? If we meet, is it possible that the Zoom report will come out prior to our first Wednesday meeting in December?
It's possible. They have not been as communicative as we had hoped. And that's one of the things that concerns me. There was another project like this that you guys were faced with, and that was on Anderson 2nd, And what happened was the city took the lead on it and took the lead agency. And SMART didn't want to build that pathway through that segment. And San Rafael saved the North-South Greenway by taking bold action, led by Mayor Phillips. Just like Mayor Cates leading the bold action here, asking for a project study report. And when I'm really, the point I'm doing procedurally is asking that you have a line in your plan that coincides with something like this, because right now you're at the table and you don't have an alternative. And so you don't have a voice, your card's been taken away from you. And so that's what I'm concerned with precedent in working historically on these segments without having the proper support at the city level. So I have a concern, but I defer to you and to Lauren and to Rafat and to the BPAC about how to approach that. I would like to see something going to the city council. It doesn't have to be this is the alternative we're choosing, but rather this is what we'd like to see in our plan, is a pathway like this. Because the Pilgrim Way alternative that somehow got in the 2018 plan, I have no idea how that happened, but somehow that got in there, and that's going through private property, and that's not an alternative that's available. So that's been eliminated. So what are you going to do?
Phil?
Since San Rafael paid half of hiring Zune, can we request that they present to us at our next meeting, whether or not it's done? They could even give us a status update. And so then we will give them this feedback directly to Zune. And so if they're done before, we could give them feedback on it. And if they have not finished it, they could give us a status update. I don't know if that's something we could request, demand of Zune, but that seems like that would be very helpful, and if it's just a status update and they're working on it and we come out in strong opposition against any alternative, that would probably be a fairly strong signal to them.
Rafat, did you have anything else to add?
Yes, thank you, Chair Powers. I think that's a great idea. And yes, we can definitely bring Zoom to make a recommendation or a presentation of the outcome of the study for the Bicycle Advisory Committee. And if not, I mean, if they say it's not in their scope or anything like that, staff can bring the study and take feedback, because there's going to be a review period. The draft is going to get circulated, and we will definitely include a round for BPAC to take a look at the study and consider all the alternatives. And I don't know. I mean, I just want to see the study. I believe Patrick. I definitely believe Patrick, but I want to see the study. I want to see the full blown study and analyze it before I make a definitive decision.
Kevin? Thanks, Rafat. Kevin?
I'm assuming that Rafat is working with the consultant on reviewing the study. And he certainly, based upon the conversation today, understands, the direction that BPAC would like to go. And I believe that he could probably communicate when it's appropriate to the consultant, what our position is. Now, if the consultant is just doing an investigatory, just investigating the various options, then, maybe it wouldn't be appropriate, but I think there may be other opportunities where he could communicate to them that we feel strongly about this.
Thank you, Kevin. Anne?
I think it's in our best interest to have something in writing that we would strongly like this alternative be considered. And whether we decide we write to the city council or we decide to write to Zoom, we need to put something in writing. So this is definitely a recommendation that we would really like them to consider very strongly. That needs to be done.
Okay.
Thank you.
Tyler?
With all due respect, if everybody here unanimously supports this, I don't really, I mean, I understand the whole idea of waiting for the report, but I personally think we should just go ahead and make some sort of motion. I mean, I don't see a point in waiting if everybody's on the same page here.
Okay, so Kevin, do you have anything else, or you just have your hand up still?
Well, I mean, I'm concerned about the process, and I'm, you know, Rafat is suggesting to us that it would be appropriate for us to wait until the study's completed to take a formal position. So I guess I'm reluctant to, and I don't know what's in the study. The study may identify something we have not considered tonight. I'm definitely in favor of pursuing what I call Patrick's option, but there's a process issue here.
Thanks, Kevin. DJ?
Yeah, I mean, I kind of have to agree with kind of along the same lines of what Kevin is saying. I mean, the city is a participant in the process here in the study. I mean, we are funding part of the study. We're a participant in the study. So in essence, the city has agreed they would go along with this idea of evaluating three alternatives in the study. And so I don't really understand why we as representatives of the city would sort of like undermine, you know, something we already agreed to do. Rush to prejudgment for something we already agreed to do. I mean, I totally think that we should review the study and provide comment on it when it comes out.
Well, that's not what I suggested. What I suggested is that plan that the BPAC has, that its master bicycle pedestrian plan has been eliminated. So you now have no alternative. You have no voice in the process.
I disagree with that too. I mean, it's our plan. It's only eliminated if we eliminate it. I mean, what's shown on our plan is non-specific and pretty vague. I mean, it's our plan. It's not eliminated unless we eliminated it from the plan.
Well, it shows going through Pilgrim Way, and the property owners of Pilgrim Way.
But Pilgrim Way is not written in writing. I mean, there's nothing in here that says that we want to develop a path on Pilgrim Way. It just says we want to develop a path that connects between the top of the hill and the Marydale path, and Marydale and the path to the Civic Center station. I mean,
that's not what the green line shows that you have in your plan.
I guess I sort of disagree that our plan is definitive to the extent that it is not going to let us proceed with the project that we think is preferred, I guess is my opinion there.
Well, I didn't understand that.
I don't think that our plan is definitive to the point that it requires amendment in order to make sure that we get the project that we want built. I think it's pretty vague, to be totally honest. I mean, I'm looking at it right now. It says extend Puerto Suelo Hill Path north of Lincoln to connect to Marydale Road and propose smart pathway parallel to Los Ranchitos Road. And that pathway is built now, the one that we described as proposed in this. So all it really says is, this proposed project in our plan is literally just says a path connecting the Puerto Suelo path and the smart path. It has no description of alignment or location or anything.
So it's getting kind of late. I would, I kind of, would the committee be comfortable with a letter to the city council just saying that we received a presentation on the western alignment, and we recommend, according, in alignment with what Ann said, we'd like to make a recommendation that this alignment is part of the considerations. It seems like it already is if there are three alternatives that are being evaluated, but we would just be reinforcing that the BPAC is interested in seeing further consideration of this alternative. Would that be appropriate, Kevin and DJ? Would you go along with that in terms of process?
Again, in terms of process, I don't really agree with that. We haven't received the formal study, and I don't see the hurry. I don't know why we can't wait for the next meeting to do this exact same process to the actual consultant that was hired to complete this project. Everyone's on the same page. Like there's no disagreement anywhere here about what we want to do and what we want to see done in any of this discussion. And so the disagreement is when we need to do this stuff. And so we could hear this Zoom presentation and they could come back and be very combative to us. And then we could be combative back and write city council and say, hey, we want this Western alternative, amend our bicycle plan. And so this consultancy is coming against our plan. But I don't see that there's a reason that we need to do that now rather than when we hear from them in 2 months. Like we could still do all of this stuff in 2 months.
Okay. So Lauren has Lauren has an action item on the agenda. And does anybody want to move that we wait and take action after a presentation at a December meeting, or we consider action at a future meeting with the information that the city is a funding partner in a study of the 3 alternatives, including the TAM study, the Transportation Alternatives and Marin study, that is extensively detailed, as a concept at this point. Nobody wants to make an emotion. I don't see anybody. We had a motion. We didn't have a second. So I guess as a chair, Patrick, I feel like I do want to follow a procedure that everybody feels comfortable with. I think that we do support and that I want, I do understand Rafat's sentiments and others in terms of procedure. So I would like to, Rafat, so you will work, in terms of next steps, Rafat, you will work with a Zoom consultant in getting a presentation at our next BPAC meeting on December.
Definitely.
Okay.
Lauren, Bill, and I will make sure that when the draft report is out, we will share it with the BPAC.
Okay, and then our next meeting is December 1st. Okay. Are there, Patrick, I appreciate your time and your presentation, and we will move forward on this in the future. You've got our support.
For all your time and attention, and thank you all for the kind words. And the one thing I leave you with is I hope you guys get as excited as I am about this pathway. I'll tell you what, it's been a long time coming, and the engineers done a tremendous job. And I just hope you guys all get out there, because I think if we do our jobs right, I'm serious, we do our jobs right, this is an inexpensive pathway to build. And we could be at a ribbon cutting ceremony connecting the biggest city in San Rafael with the Greenway by 2025. That's my prediction. So I hope that's the direction we're all heading. And I want to make the decisions to get there. And I fully respect your decisions you've made procedurally. And you can count on me to advocate to get there as quickly as we can and to help you as much as possible achieve this goal. Thank you.
Super. Thank you, Patrick. And
Thank you, Patrick.
You'll have future support. I did not reach out to the attendees to see if anybody had comment on this agenda item. It's getting late. Are there any last comments on this agenda item? Okay, seeing none. I think if there's any, does anyone have anything for a future agenda that they want to raise at this moment? Okay, well, thank you all for attending the meeting. I'm so sorry it ran over, but I think it was important stuff. So thank you to our presenters and thank you to our attendees. Really appreciate your time, and to the fellow BPAC members.
Thank
Bye.
you all very much.
Thanks, Lauren, and thanks for
everybody.
too.
Thanks. We'll adjourn at 8:38.
Okay,
Have a good night, everyone.
thank
Good night.
you.
Thank you. Good night.
Good
Bye.
night, you guys.